To the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 220. We're talking week 4 NFL picks. Joining him by Jacob Kamaker from NBC Sports Boston. How's it going, Jacob?
It's going good. How about you, Walt?
I'm good. So week 3 was pretty good. 10-6 overall. I hit most of my top plays except for Denver. Unfortunately, the Broncos kind of fumbled that game away. So 3-2 in the Super Contest. Not great there, but can't complain about a winning week. So how was your week 3?
Mine was pretty good. I actually went 11-5, so I finally climbed back over 500 on the season for my picks. I shouldn't have let you convince me to do Denver instead of Green Bay, but I actually can't blame you for that one after I gave you the Falcons advice week 1 and the fact that, like you said, they kind of fumbled the game away a bit. So you might have had the right side there. It's kind of an unfortunate ending, but both of us getting double-digit wins, certainly a good sign.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that game was frustrating. It was 10-10. The Broncos had the ball, and then they fumbled, return for a touchdown. Well, basically return for a touchdown. And then 17-10, they fumble again. Green Bay gets the ball in the short field. They scored another touchdown. Like, all of a sudden, it's 24-10 when the game was, like, even. And this was very disappointing, but, this variance can kill you sometimes, and then it can hurt you, and then it can help you other times. So hopefully we get some good variance this week. We finally have a good Thursday night game. The Eagles are at the Packers. Packers open up -3. It's up to -5 actually. So it was -4.5 for most of today, but now it's up to 5. There's a ton of action on Green Bay. So who do you like in this game?
I'm kind of surprised there's been that much action on Green Bay. Not that they haven't looked good to start the season. They've been pretty good and better than I think a lot of people expected. I actually had them as the 1 seed in the NFC during my playoff predictions preseason, so I'm not surprised they're doing well. But they're playing the Eagles on a short week on the road, and I know the Eagles haven't looked particularly good, but they're like only a couple dropped passes away from being, I think, 2-1 or something along those lines, possibly undefeated. And I just don't see why the Packers are going to be favored by this much because they haven't played their best on offense this year. Like we were just talking about against the Broncos, they got lucky from turnovers on a handful of situations, and it's really been their defense that's been leading them. And I think that they'll be able to keep the Eagles in check, and they could win this game. But Thursday night tends to favor the home team. It also tends to favor the team with the better quarterback. So that's a check mark on both sides, one for the Eagles, one for the Packers, with Aaron Rodgers being healthy. But I think the Eagles are the side in this one, especially if we're getting 5 on it. They're 4-2 as home dogs under Peterson, and the Packers since 2016 are 4-5 as road favorites. So I'm not liking the Packers as a side in this one. I think if they win, it's going to be by a field goal. And I think the Eagles might be more desperate for a win at this point. So I'm on the Eagles +5 here. I'm probably not going to bet this game just because the injury issues with the Eagles kind of scare me a little bit. But I think they'd be the side to go with in this contest.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on the Eagles, provided Alshon Jeffrey plays. I think that's a big deal. As you said, the Eagles are a couple of drops away from being 3-0 or at least 2-1. Nelson Aguilar, if he catches that deep pass against Atlanta, they win there. In week 3, JJ Arcega-Whiteside drops the pass right near the goal line. And if he catches that, then they're in position for a game-winning field goal. So, the Eagles, they've been unlucky this season, both with injuries and drops. And you have to figure that, like with us, maybe variance will go their way. So I think they have the overall better roster. And quarterbacks are, I think, pretty even. I'd give the nod to Rodgers, but actually, I'm not sure about that because the way Rodgers has been playing this year with Matt LaFleur, he seems to not be taking to that offense very well, even though they're 3-0. It's because they're 3-0 because of their defense, not because of what Rodgers has done. Rodgers hasn't played poorly, but he hasn't been himself. So I think this is an even game. This line should be 3. The advanced spread from the Westgate was Packers -3. And so this line moved 2 points because of what happened last week. So I like fading overreactions, and the Eagles seem to be the better side here. So I'm going to be on the Eagles. Currently not betting this game, but I may decide to bet it, especially if the line keeps rising. If this hits 6, I'm definitely betting the Eagles. And it's already 5, as I mentioned, it's 5. It's actually plus 5.5 at bookmaker. So maybe it's going to hit 6 at some point.
Yeah, if it hits 6, I'd definitely go with the Eagles. Like, pretty much a no-brainer. The only concern I have with Carson Wentz versus Aaron Rodgers is Wentz hasn't looked particularly good this year, but it's been because he's holding on to the ball too long. So I don't know if he's still like trying to do a little too much, or if he's worried about throwing downfield or something. But the Eagles are still the right side here. They're a really good home team, and they need a win.
Yeah. Yeah. So next game, the Panthers are at the Texans. The Texans open up -4. It's still -4. Actually was -5 earlier today, and it's dropped back down. I don't know if this is a sharp action or not, but who do you like in this game?
So I don't like the Texans in general. We go over this every week. I'm just afraid of Bill O'Brien teams. They never seem to be playing consistently at any point. Like, they almost beat the Saints on the road, and then they beat the Chargers this past week on the road. But they lost. Yeah, they lost to the Saints week 1. They beat the Chargers. They almost lost to the Gardner Minshew-led Jacksonville Jaguars. So you never really know what you're going to get with them. I know the Panthers have Kyle Allen at quarterback, so that's a little bit of a toss-up. But if you just look at the rosters, they're pretty even outside of the quarterback position. And the one area that the Panthers are better than the Texans is probably on their offensive line. So I think that's going to be an upside for the Panthers there. And, they've been averaging 4 sacks a game, the Panthers, which I think is good for 3rd in the league. And the Texans are allowing 4 sacks per game. So the Panthers could have a good day getting to after Deshaun Watson, which we all know makes it harder for the Texans to win. And just in the Ron Rivera era, Carolina is 25-14 as a road dog. So if we're getting 4 or 5 points, I like them to cover it. I don't necessarily know if it's going to happen. I probably won't bet on this game just because, with Kyle Allen, he has 2 starts under his belt. One was week 17 against the Saints when they arrested Drew Brees. But I liked how he looked last week. We'll see how he does against better defense. I like the Panthers, but definitely not betting this until we know exactly what Kyle Allen is.
Yeah, it's a much different matchup this week for Kyle Allen. Last week he got Arizona, a team missing both of its starting cornerbacks, and now he gets the Texans, who, while they don't have a great defensive backfield, they still have a very good defense overall, much better than Arizona, and they're coordinated by Romeo Crennel. So when I was initially looking at this game, I made this line Texas -2.5 because I really like the Panthers' overall roster. Like their pass rush, as you said, is great. They put a lot of pressure on Murray. They sacked him 8 times. And I like what they do overall. I think their secondary is even a little underrated. Dante Jackson's playing much better in the second year, and Bradbury's just okay. So I think they have the pieces to make a playoff run if they get good quarterbacking. The problem is that we don't know if we're going to get good quarterbacking. So as I said, I initially thought I was going to be on the Panthers, but then I kind of realized that, Romeo Crennel is, he tends to eat up these young quarterbacks. Hopefully not literally, but he's just such a great defensive coordinator that rookie quarterbacks tend to struggle against him. And I know Kyle Allen's not technically a rookie, but this is only his 3rd start. And as you said, it was week 17 against the Saints, sitting some starters. And then Arizona last week, missing 2 starting cornerbacks. Like, this is going to be Kyle Allen's first real challenge. And I have to think that he's going to struggle at least a little bit against Crennel. So I'm leaning toward the Texans here. Not very confident in this game. I'm not going to bet this one. At least I don't think so. So I guess we're on opposite sides here, but I'm not too confident here.
Yeah, this game's one of the ones that I'm least confident in on the slate, just because it could go either way. Like, who knows? If Kyle Allen plays well again and throws 4 more touchdowns, suddenly he'll become like the next Gardner Minshew type. Like, hey, this is a guy who can be a starting quarterback right now and be good. So we'll definitely see what happens. I can't bet the Texans. I don't believe in Bill O'Brien. I love Romeo Crennel, but I don't believe in Bill O'Brien.
I know it's so hard to bet on him. He's such a bad coach. It sucks. I feel like we're going to learn a lot from this game, but that doesn't mean we have to bet on it, right? So
definitely.
Yeah. All right. Next game, Browns at the Ravens. This line open up. Ravens -5. It's up to 7. I actually see, well, not really, 7.5, close. So it's minus 7.5 plus 110. So you have to pay a lot of juice for the plus 7.5. But based on the line movement, it might be trending in that direction. There's about a 2/3 clip betting action on the Ravens. So are you with the public on this one?
I am, and it goes back to the whole bad coaching thing. I mean, we all saw what happened on Sunday Night Football on 4th and 9 when Freddie Kitchens tried to outsmart everyone by running a draw play that was doomed from the start. And I frankly cannot explain what he was thinking. The Cleveland offense, I don't know. You have Odell Beckham Jr., Baker Mayfield, and a bunch of other receiving weapons, and you run a draw on 4th and 9. I don't know what was going through his head or what was going through Todd Monken's head, but this Browns offense has not looked good to start the year. They're living up to my expectations that they were going to be the Dream Team Eagles, and I'm sticking with that. So I like the Ravens here. I know the number's a bit high, but I do not trust Freddie Kitchens to keep this one close. The Ravens realistically should be 3-1 against the spread. They're 2-1, but that spread against the Cardinals was a terrible spread from the start because everyone was overreacting to the Ravens beating the Dolphins. So I think that they'll be able to win by a touchdown. They'll cover the 7. If the line keeps going up, we'd be less confident in this. And I'm not going to bet this game either. But I'm on the Ravens side because again, I cannot bring myself to bet on Freddie Kitchens running on 4th and 9.
So bad. I don't understand what he was thinking. It was such a weird play call. I thought the decision to go for it was the right one, but you have to make a good play. You have to call a good play, and it just didn't happen for him. I think I'm going to be on the Browns here. It really depends on how many starters they're missing in their secondary. Last week, they're missing all 4 starters in their secondary against the Rams, and that's kind of why I ended up betting on the Rams. Toward the end. And when we talked last week, I didn't really have much of an interest in betting that game. But as soon as it was announced that the Browns are going to be missing all their starters in the secondary, I thought the Rams are going to be a good bet, and that turned out to be the case. And so, it really matters what the injury report says. If the Browns get two starters back in their secondary, I think that's huge, especially against Lamar Jackson, who's been inconsistent as a passer. We saw him in the first 2 weeks of the season; he was great. Last week, not so much, and it's not like he even played a good defense last week. It was the Chiefs, and he struggled to pass. And the Browns, if they have, like Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams, like if they have those guys, they have a good defense overall, and I think they could limit Lamar Jackson. So I think that's in Cleveland's favor if they get some of their players back. And I think the spread's an overreaction. So the Westgate advanced spread was Baltimore -4. And now it's all the way up to 7. Like that's insane. It's like 3 points for 1 week of action. Like unless there's an injury, I don't think anything should move the line 3 points. I just think this is way too much of a reaction. I made this spread Browns +4.5 before I looked at the lines, and I just think this line's too high, especially if it gets to 7.5. Like that would be insane. So yeah, I'm probably going to be on the Browns. It really depends on the injury situation. Just how much I bet on them really depends on who's available.
Yeah, and I get the case you're making for sure. I mean, I think the number's a little bit high. I'm just reluctant to side with the Browns, but I would defer to you on this one because I'm not particularly confident in the Ravens. So I'm still on the Ravens side. And if the injuries are there, it obviously helps the Ravens case, but I was not wild about that 7.5 number. So again, this is all the ones we've talked about earlier so far are ones that I'm less confident in, and I feel like we're going to hit the stretch of ones I'm more confident in really soon. So that should help me out.
Yeah, it was a rough. Like I was looking these top half of games, and I was like, I really don't like any of these. And then starting in the middle, I just have like huge plays on all of them. So I'm more excited to get to those. This next game, Redskins at Giants. Giants open up -3. It's actually down to -2.5, which I find absolutely bizarre. I have no idea what to make of the spread. I'm very confused by it. So maybe you have more of an idea here. The public, I thought the public would be all over the Giants, and they're not. So can you explain this to me?
The Giants should be all over, or the public should be all over the Giants. I don't understand why this line has moved in that direction. My only theory is that the surprisingly high number of Case Keenum truthers, which there are far more Case Keenum truthers out there than there should be. My theory is that they're betting hard on the Redskins to be like, oh yeah, look at, they're getting favored now because Keenum's still the starter. But that's about the only thing I've got there. I already locked this in at -3, which evidently was a mistake. I thought the line was going to move in the other direction, but the Giants are the better side here. Daniel Jones looked legit against the Buccaneers. The Redskins defense isn't as good as the Buccaneers. Even without Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones should be fine. Mitchell Trubisky just looked good against the Redskins, even if it was just mostly in the first half. And Jay Gruden's going to be fired really, really soon. Like, it's not going to happen this week because they're on a short week. I thought if they got blown out worse on Monday night, I run the Rigo's Rag Redskins site on the Fansided Network. I have all the stuff ready that says Jay Gruden has been fired, ready to go with one click. So I think that unless Gruden can somehow motivate his team to play for him and say, like, hey, guys, if we lose, I'm getting fired, I don't see how they can win this game. I don't think they cover. The Giants are not a good team, but offensively, they're much better than the Redskins. Case Keenum had 5 turnovers against the Bears, and he actually fumbled 4 times. There's one that's not included in the box score because it was negated by a penalty, but the line can't block. Keenum was terrible after 2 good games to start the year. There's nothing to like about the Redskins.
Well, I kind of like the Redskins. I'm not a Case Keenum truther though. I think Keenum sucks, but I kind of like the Redskins here just because they were humiliated on Monday Night Football, and I think that they might get enough energy to like bounce back and kind of prove that, you know, they aren't as horrible as they looked, which they might be. And meanwhile, the Giants had this like epic comeback in the fourth quarter. They won at the very end. They could be a little they could have celebrated a little too much after that victory. So I think the motivational aspect favors the Redskins. And I completely agree with everything you said about Daniel Jones and his matchup against the Redskins. However, I think the Redskins, they should be able to move the ball on the Giants. The Giants, their defense, as bad as the Redskins defense looked Monday night, their defense is worse than the Redskins defense. They can't cover anyone. Their secondary is an abomination. They can't get to the quarterback. They can't stop the run. At least the Redskins have guys who can get to the quarterback, like Montez Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan. Like, these guys are good. They have some good players on the defensive line. The Giants have nothing on defense. Like, their defense is atrocious, like on every level. And so I think the Redskins might be the better team, as crazy as it sounds, even though Daniel Jones is far better than Case Keenum. And I was wondering, like, am I crazy here? Like, why do I like the Redskins a little bit? So I had to look at some other numbers, which I do for every game anyway. So the computer model I do made this line Giants -2, and DVOA made this line Giants -2 as well. So I was like, okay, so when this was +3, I was like, hey, the Redskins might actually be a good play here because the line is even higher, even though I thought this line would move a lot based on last week because the advanced spread was Giants -2.5. I thought this would get to like 4, 4.5, maybe even like 5. The fact that it stayed at 3 was pretty telling to me that either two things are happening here. I think one, the books are taking a side, they're taking a stance here on the Redskins, or two, there's some very sharp money on the Redskins. So I think one of those 2 things are happening. And so I'm more inclined to say the Redskins, but I can't bet them heavily. I'm on there for 1 unit. I just don't trust them. And what you said could be right. I mean, they could just completely collapse and not try at all. And then Jay Gruden's fired. And then you could just click that button and, then everything will show up. So that's my take on this game. I don't feel strongly about it, but I thought this was a very bizarre line and line movement.
Yeah, no, it definitely has been bizarre line movement. I mean, I'm very much everything I do is through a Washington-centric lens when I'm looking at the Redskins. So I'm seeing all the fallout and all the Jay Gruden should be fired stuff. So I'm viewing that as a non-motivational tool, but you might be right that it is going to be motivational. So we'll see what happens. But I've got to say that I disagree with your take here, but you definitely could be right because who knows? Maybe Gruden will get the Redskins to play well.
Maybe, or they could just lose 31-0. We'll see. I'm not, like I said, I'm not confident in that game at all. But all right, this next game, a little more confident in. Chargers are at the Dolphins. Chargers open up -16.5, still -16.5. If you're bargain shopping, you can get -16 at BetUS. Might make all the difference in the world, but probably not. Who do you like in this game? I should note, by the way, even action. So for once, the public's not fading the Dolphins.
I'm kind of surprised by that. I mean, this isn't, again, -16, calling that a great number isn't really something I would think about saying. But, I mean, the Chargers are coming off of a loss to the Texans. They kind of need a win. They're averaging, I think, over almost 200 yards per game more than the Dolphins. The Dolphins are giving up almost 500 yards a game. So there's some things working against the Chargers. They have to travel to Miami. It's going to be an early game on the East Coast. It might be hot, but I still think that they can win this. I'm not sure I'm going to bet this spread just because I think 2 touchdowns is about right, but the 2 touchdowns and a field goal, I'm not as sure about. So, but I'm definitely still on the Chargers for this one, and the Dolphins are just terrible, and I just can't bring myself to pick the Dolphins to cover this one just yet, even though they tried harder against the Cowboys.
Yeah, they tried harder. Dallas didn't try at all, and yet they still lost by 25. So that's how bad this team is. They're the worst team in NFL history. And when I was talking to you last week, I wasn't planning on betting the Cowboys, even though I like them to cover. And then some emailers, they kind of argued. They're like, if you truly think Dolphins are the worst team of all time, and they're trying to lose, like not all the players, like there is some effort from some of the players, not all the players. Like Kalen Balash sticks out as someone who's just mailing it in, and they're sitting Kenyon Drake because they want to trade him. Like they're not giving him as many snaps as they normally would. It's stuff like that. Like the organization wants to lose, so they're saying, if you really think this team's trying to lose for the most part and they're the worst team of all time, why don't you just bet against them every week? And I was like, that kind of makes sense. So I put 2 units on the Cowboys, and when it was 10-6 at halftime, I felt like an idiot. And the Cowboys ended up winning by 25 despite not trying at all. And that just shows how bad this team is. You mentioned the Chargers coming off a loss, so they have to try. If they lose this game somehow, they're going to be 1-3. So there has to be some sort of effort from the Chargers. I think this line's too low. I made this line -19. The computer model I use made it -22, which is kind of insane for a road team that's not elite, especially a losing team. This, by the way, is the first time a losing team has been favored by this many points since, I believe, 2000. So it's kind of crazy. But that just shows how bad the Dolphins are. And I'm going to be on the Chargers for a couple units here.
Yeah, no, I think you just convinced me that I am going to bet this game. There's no reason to bet on the Dolphins. You can just keep fading them at this point in time. That's all that really needs to be said about them. And I'm looking at the live comments we're getting right now. This is unrelated to this game, but Rick's out there. Rick G's listening. He wants feedback on Baker Mayfield at some point, his performance to start the year. So, if we're done talking about the Dolphins, if there's any take you have particularly on Baker Mayfield, I'm curious as to what it might be.
Yeah, his offensive line hasn't been very good, obviously. Left tackle has been a big problem. Right tackle, not very good either. And they're really missing Kevin Zeitler. So I think anytime you get a young quarterback missing offensive lineman, that's going to hurt him. We saw the opposite happen with Jared Goff a few years ago, right? His rookie year, he had an abysmal blocking, and he was just atrocious as a rookie. And then, the next year, obviously, they get Sean McVay and Greg Olsen to help him. But with a better offensive line, he does so much better. So it really makes all the difference in the world what sort of blocking you get. And I think Baker Mayfield with this blocking getting worse, because he had good blocking last year in front of him. With this blocking worse, I feel like he's kind of like panicking. He doesn't really know what to do. And I obviously, like when they made a point during the telecast that when he releases the ball quickly, he does better, and he's not really thinking about it. But I just feel like the game's a little too fast for him right now, and it's going to slow down at some point. Like, he's talented, he loves football, he's going to work hard. But I think right now they have to worry about their offensive line. And I heard like people were suggesting that they trade for Trent Williams, and I think that would be a great move. Unfortunately, they'd still have a bad coach, so I mean that doesn't help. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mostly agree with your take. Offensive line success is the key, or offensive line continuity and performance, I think, is the key indicator of success in the NFL right now. Because offensive line performance could be the difference between, like you said with Jared Goff, the difference between looking terrible and looking competent. So I think Baker's struggling because of that. I think he was due for a little bit of growing pains anyway. Hopefully he'll be able to bounce back, but it really does fall on that offensive line. And to tie it back to the Dolphins game, like we look at the Dolphins, they have a terrible offensive line. They're bad. The Chargers are a really good team with a bad offensive line that is now in danger of possibly falling to 1-3. So, those it's all about the offensive line. That's part of the reason that Baker struggled to start the season. And a lot of people could see that when they traded away Kevin Zeitler, that was going to be a problem because everyone was so hyper-focused on Odell Beckham that they forget Kevin Zeitler was still really important to that offense.
Yeah, and they went into the year with Greg Robinson as their left tackle, which just is like a huge mistake, like from the start. You can't do that. I thought when people were saying they're going to go to the Super Bowl, I thought people were just ignoring their offensive line. Like that's so important. Like you said, it's really instrumental in a quarterback success rate, especially a young quarterback who needs more time. Anyway, the next game, Raiders are at the Colts. So line open up Colts -6.5. It was hovering around 7 earlier. It's still kind of there, but you have to pay juice for +7. Looks like the public's on the Colts for about like a 2/3 clip. So who do you like here?
I've been like unnecessarily afraid of the Raiders to start the season. So I don't really know why that's been the case. I think I overreacted to their Monday Night Football game because I've been like very unwilling to bet against them in recent weeks, but now I see no reason why not to. I mean, the Colts are technically 2-0-1 against the spread, but they're 3-0 against the spread in games that I bet on them because I locked in the game against the Chargers week 1, I think it was, when they pushed earlier than most. So I hit on that one. So Brissett's been completing like almost 72% of his passes. The Raiders have allowed completions on 68.8% of their passes. So I just think the Colts are going to be able to move the ball. The Raiders maybe not as much on that offensive side of the ball. Darren Waller will be able to get some catches. But aside from him, they got Tyrell Williams, who's been good. And Josh Jacobs looked good at times, but he's sick and lost 10 pounds last week, I think. So I don't think he'll be back to full strength quite yet. So I'm taking the Colts in this one. I think they're good for 2 or 3 units. -7 is a big number, but I trust Jacoby Brissett at this point. I think he's proven enough that he can at least be efficient. The rest of that roster, as we've talked about multiple times, is really solid.
Yeah, we're on opposite sides here again. I actually like the Raiders quite a bit. It really depends on, again, like who's going to be available for the Colts. Darius Leonard missed last week's game. He's a big part of their defense. So we don't know if he's going to clear concussion protocol. So that remains to be seen. They just lost Malik Hooker. It's a big loss for them. Last year when they didn't have Hooker, the Chiefs threw all over them in the divisional round of the playoffs. And obviously Derek Carr is not anywhere near Patrick Mahomes, but Derek Carr, he has Tyrell Williams, he has Darren Waller, he has some nice weapons. So I think they can move the ball a little bit, especially if Leonard's out in addition to Hooker. I think that those are 2 big losses over the middle. And then on the other side of the ball, T.Y. Hilton might be out with a quad injury. So, if all these guys are missing, or at least, if 2 of these guys are missing, I think that opens up a nice play on the Raiders. And there are a couple other factors. So the Colts play the Chiefs next week, so they could be focused on that game. They're coming off a couple of big wins. They're 2-1. They're feeling good about themselves, and now they have to play the Raiders, who they just watched get blown out last week. And I just thought the Raiders matched up very poorly against the Vikings. Whereas the Colts, if they're missing Leonard and Hooker, the Colts already struggle against tight ends, and I think Derek Carr can get Waller going. And then also the Colts have won their games by 2 and 3 points so far, so they're not blowing teams out. So I don't know why they really blow out the Raiders, especially if they're missing some of their key players. So like I said, I think I'm going to be in the Raiders, but how much really depends on who's available for them. Right now I have 2 units, but if Hilton, Hooker, and Leonard are all out, then this might be like a 4-unit play for me.
And now you've got me fearing the Raiders again. So I knew about the injuries, but heat of the moment, me being now anti-Raiders, I overlooked that. So I'll stick to the Colts, but I'll probably drop my unit count now from 2 to 3 to maybe 1. And if T.Y. Hilton plays, hopefully he'll play, but hopefully Darius Leonard will play. But I'm a little bit more wary of this game now. We'll see if I can go 0 for 3 against the Raiders, or 0 for 4 to start the season.
Yeah, I was 0 for 2 to start with the Raiders, and then I kind of I bet against them. I picked against them last week. I think everyone overreacted to that Monday night game, and I even wrote about it in my power rankings. I'm like, don't overreact to that Monday night game, and then I bet on the Raiders the week 2. So kind of dumb mistake on my part, but the Raiders are obviously a bad team, but they can at least do some things well. Like they're not inept. I would say they're better than the Redskins and stuff like that. So I don't think they're completely like horrible, So we'll see. It really depends on who's available for the Colts.
Yeah, definitely. The Raiders are one of those bottom barrel teams that'll give a good effort every time too. So you never know, and who knows? Maybe Jacoby Brissett has a bad game. He hasn't had one yet, so he might be due. We don't know.
That's true. Yeah, especially if Hilton's out. It's like who's he throws to downfield? Like Zach Pascal, like Paris Campbell, who has no experience. It's pretty tough because they're already missing Devin Funchess. So down 2 receivers. I think that's a big deal. Next game, Chiefs at the Lions. This line opened up Chiefs -6. See a 6.5 at the Westgate in Nevada. So if you're in Nevada, you can bet that one. Otherwise, I don't see a 6.5 anywhere. The public is all over the Chiefs. Tons of money on the Chiefs, more than 80% of the action on Kansas City. So are you with the public here?
I'm not. I'm on the Lions here. I've been anti-Lions early in the season, and they've proven me wrong most of the time, except for the tie against Arizona. Actually, no, I had them last week against Eagles, so I haven't been anti-Lions. I've been wanting to be anti-Lions, but I haven't actually been anti-Lions. But they're undefeated. It's possible that they could have been 3-0 if they didn't give up all those points in the fourth quarter to Kyler Murray and Arizona. They're at home, and Matt Stafford is 25-16 outright at home. So that means that this could end up being a close game. I don't know if they ultimately win. But the Lions go on bye after this week while the Chiefs are preparing to play the Colts, as you mentioned earlier, and that's a primetime game for the Chiefs. So the Chiefs, they may not necessarily be looking ahead to the Colts, but if they are even a little bit, the Lions have the advantage because I think the Lions going on bye after this week is going to give them a chance to really say, like, hey, let's put everything we have into this, try to beat the Chiefs, go into the bye undefeated, and kind of show everyone that we're here to compete and we're not going away. So I think the motivational edge is there for sure. The only thing that gives me a little bit of pause on this one is that the Chiefs are 4-2 against the spread as an away favorite. So that's under Patrick Mahomes, to clarify as well. So that gives me a little bit of pause, but I still think the Lions will keep this close. If they don't win, that's fine. They may still get a backdoor cover like the Ravens got the past week. So I'm with the Lions in this one. We'll see if they can get it done. I'll probably go 1 or 2 units on them. And if the line moves any more, maybe gets to 7, I might consider more.
Yeah, we're in agreement here. I actually like the lines for 3 units. I think this line's too high. I made the spread. I actually made the spread Chiefs -1. I thought that was a little crazy, but then I looked at DVOA and that said Chiefs should be -1 as well. So that kind of made me feel better about the projection. The advanced spread on this game was Chiefs -4.5. So this line moved, if you're getting 6.5, this line moved 2 points based on one game. And what was the game? It wasn't even the lines like because they won last week. It was the Chiefs' victory over the Ravens, who I don't think the Ravens are as good as people thought they were. So I'm not really convinced that this line should move at all, let alone 2 points. I just think there's a lot of good value with the lines of +6.5 or even 6. I think that's still a good number. And the Chiefs have a bad defense. So even if even if they're ahead by double digits, like say they're up 10, the Lions could easily get a backdoor cover here, kind of like the Ravens did last week. The Ravens were down, 30-13, and they somehow covered. Matthew Stafford's a better passer than Lamar Jackson is, at least at this stage of Jackson's career. So I think the Lions should be able to cover this game and maybe even win outright. I think you're completely right on what you said about the motivational edge. Not only could the Chiefs be looking ahead, they could be looking behind a little bit, because that win over the Ravens is kind of a statement game. It's their first home game of the season. It was a big deal for them because people are hyping up the Ravens. The Ravens are 2-0. So the Chiefs made a statement victory, and now they have to go on the road to play Detroit. And yeah, this is kind of like the kitchen sink game for the Lions. Like, this is their chance. This is their statement game. This is their chance to prove that they can compete with the best teams in the NFL. So I like the Lions a lot here. 3 units. It's kind of terrifying to go against Patrick Mahomes, but I still think that, with the spread being inflated like it is, I think the Lions are a good play.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing, I've read this a couple places, but the team that Detroit currently has is really buying into Matt Patricia's vision, I think, is what I've been hearing, or at least reading. So that gives me some hope that he may be able to get them riled up, ready to play this game. And again, if they can get into that bye week undefeated, all of a sudden that NFC North is really, really strong, because no one really expected the Lions to be quite this good out of the gate. So that'll give them motivation to stay in that tough division race.
Yeah. Speaking of tough division, they haven't lost to a team outside of the division. Like, the only non-win was that tie in week 1 against Arizona, which probably should never happen in hindsight. They were up big, and it was just a fluky fourth quarter. If the Lions were 3-0 right now, if they held on to that lead, what would the spread be? It would not be 6 or 6.5. It'd be like 4, right?
Yeah, definitely. It would probably be 4, I would say, is the number they'd settle on. Because you wouldn't go as small as 3 with Patrick Mahomes in the game, but I think 4 would definitely be the number.
Yeah, and I still think 4 would be too high. So 6 is definitely a great value. Next game, Patriots at the Bills. This line opened up, Patriots minus 6.5. It's up to 7. Tons of money on New England. Same thing, more than 80% of the action on the Patriots. So who do you like here?
I still like the Patriots. I know they did not cover against the Jets last week, but I blame Jarrett Stidham and that random pick 6 for that. That was a terrible throw. Very upsetting to watch that one slip away. But the Bills are a little bit overrated. They're 3-0 to start the season, but they almost lost to the Bengals last week, which is bad. It's very bad. The Bengals are not good. And they're 3-5 against the spread as home underdogs under Sean McDermott. So I don't quite have faith that they're going to be able to keep it as close with the Patriots as people are thinking. I think it might be a tight game in the first half and third quarter, but I think the Patriots will pull away. I actually have a score prediction for this one. Yesterday, I just had a vision. I was like, the Patriots aren't going to do as well on offense as people think. So it's going to be a 26-17 game. So as long as that spread is under 9, I'll be taking the Patriots. But I imagine it'll stay around there. It may go up a little bit more to 8, 8.5. But I'm with the Patriots 2 units on this one. And I just think the Bills are due for a loss.
Yeah, I think so too. Not only was their victory over the Bengals pretty dubious, they almost lost, like you said. Week 1, they were down 16-0 against the Jets, and their mono-stricken quarterback, Sam Darnold, who, in hindsight, it's like I was so shocked that Darnold performed so poorly, even against a good defense. I thought he'd do well, and then the mono thing comes out. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's why. Like, he felt like crap the entire game, didn't know why. As someone who had mono, I can say that. I could say that's exactly how it feels. And then they needed CJ Mosley to get hurt, and so they went on the 17-0 run in the fourth quarter. If it wasn't for that, they'd be 2-1 right now, and they almost lose to the Bengals. So you think like maybe they lose those 2 games. Variance doesn't go their way. They're 1-2, and so their only win is a game where they struggled to put Eli Manning away. It's a very unconvincing 3-0 record here. This might be one of the worst 3-0 teams we've seen in a while. Like, I love the Bills' defense, and I think their defense is might be the reason why I picked them to cover the spread, because I just think this line's too high for a Patriot team that is missing a couple offensive linemen. Julian Edelman might not play. Antonio Brown's gone. And so, if Edelman sits out, it's like, how do they really score here? I think you're right in saying that it's going to be a lower scoring game. Actually, I have it 17-13. I think this is going to be a tight one. Buffalo's defense is legit. They're going to be playing with a ton of emotion at home. So I kind of favor the Bills here, but at the same time, I know they're overrated. I just think that, they might keep it close, but if they get blown out, wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, and I get the case for betting the Bills here because the Patriots offense has been good, but not great. They can't run the ball. My colleague Phil Perry at NBC Sports Boston has written about that. Sonny Michel has been pretty bad to start the year. Whether or not that's his fault or the offensive line's fault, it's kind of hard to tell at this point, but they can't really open up running lanes. Buffalo's defense, like you said, I think is really, really good. So they could easily cover. I think Brady's going to get I think it's going to be a higher scoring game. I think he leads like a winning touchdown drive late to really put it out of reach, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the Patriots are, I feel like they tend to kick more of those front door field goals at the end. I feel like that's happened a lot over the years. Maybe it's just because they're just that good, but for me, it really depends on Edelman, and if he's available, I might switch my pick. But I don't know his availability. And you're right about Michel. Like he's struggled. I wonder if it's his knee, because he had that knee scope during the summer. So I wonder if he's just not completely healthy.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. And he's kind of been banged up. I think he was banged up at times in college too. So it's just that whole injury prone with the knee. Well, I hope he's healthy because I liked him a lot coming out of college, and he was so good in the Patriots playoff run. But if he can't get healthy, we'll see if maybe they give Damian Harris a chance to prove himself. They haven't done that yet, but Rex Burkhead's looked pretty good so far this year, so they haven't needed him.
Yeah, true. All right. Last of the early games, Titans at the Falcons. The line opened up -4.5. It's down to 4. It looks like sharp action on the Titans. The public's still betting the Falcons, though. This is one of my topics of the week. I wonder if you agree with me.
I hate everything about this game. I said this about the Falcons game last week, but this week is even worse for me. It's two teams that have just played so badly outside of the Titans killed the Browns in week 1, and then have just been dreadful since then. I mean, Marcus Mariota's been sacked 17 times, 9 of which were last week. Matt Ryan leads the league in interceptions. He has almost as many as he threw last year, and he's looked genuinely bad in most of the games. Neither team can block well. The Falcons have a lot of injury problems. I don't want to bet this game again because I've been like super pro Falcons this year, but it has to be the Titans +4. They're on extra rest. Even the Falcons are at home, but this spread is way too high. 4 points for the Falcons, who have only won one game on a very late touchdown by Julio Jones, and that was the game that Nelson Aguilar dropped a touchdown and probably would have had the Eagles win. So I don't know why they're favored by this much. I know they're good at home, and I know Matt Ryan's been really good at winning games at home, but they're actually sub 500 against the spread at home under Matt Ryan. So even while he's winning, he's not winning against the spread. So I'm thinking it's the Titans. I don't want to bet this game, but I probably bet a couple units. And if you pick the Falcons here, I'm going to question everything about this. This is my least favorite game on the slate.
Well, you don't have to question anything. So when I look at handicap games, I look at 4 things. I look at the game, the matchup. I look at the spread. I look at the motivational, and I look at the Vegas. So I think everything favors Tennessee. Look at the matchup. Atlanta's offensive line, we discussed this in previous episodes. Their offensive line has been a train wreck. Not just the new guys they got in free agency. Chris Lindstrom obviously out. And the right tackle, their first round pick, Caleb McGarry, hasn't played well. But it's their mainstays who haven't done well. Jake Matthews was awful again last week. Like this guy, I don't know what happened to him. Like maybe he has a secret injury we don't know about. I see that being the case, but he's been horrible. Alex Mack looks like he's 50 years old. I mean, he just kind of aged 20 years overnight. I don't know what happened to him. So Atlanta suddenly has one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, and Tennessee gets good pressure on the quarterback with Cameron Wake, Jarrell Casey, Harold Landry. They can get to the quarterback pretty well, and Tennessee kind of seems like a team built to beat up on this, like these sort of finesse teams like Atlanta. Like Atlanta doesn't do well in the trenches, and Tennessee is just kind of built inside out. And I think they can really dominate Atlanta in the trenches. So I like them from a matchup perspective. The spread, I agree with you completely. This line's too high. I made this line Falcons -1. And look at the other metrics agree with me. DVOA says this should be a pick 'em. So that's even more bearish on the Falcons. So yeah, I just think this line's just way too high. It's over 3, which is a huge deal. Like 3 and 4 are key numbers, especially 3. So getting that is huge. Motivational, the Titans were just embarrassed by the Jaguars in national TV, and they've had a lot of time to think about it. And so I think they're gonna, come out of this game like fired up, kind of prove that they shouldn't have been blown out like that, or basically blown out. So I think they have the extra motivational edge there, and plus the time to prepare is a big deal too. And then you look at the Vegas. As I said, 2/3 of the action on the Falcons, not a huge deal, but the fact that the sharps are betting the Titans, I think that's important. So I like the Titans a lot. They're one of my top picks of the week. It's 5 units. I might lock this in soon.
Yeah, I'll probably bet on this game and lock it in soon too. I don't want to because I've been on the Falcons bandwagon, but they're just proven to be so bad this year with that offensive line problem. I'm wondering, what do you think happens if the Falcons keep playing this badly? Do you think they move on from Dan Quinn?
Probably, right? Because they fired their coordinator last offseason. And if a team fires a coordinator and nothing changes, then they might fire the head coach. Because, I mean, you're not the only one who thought the Falcons were going to make a deep playoff run. I thought they can get to the playoffs and maybe even the NFC Championship or a Super Bowl. Like I put a small bet on them to win the Super Bowl. Back before I liked the Panthers a little bit more, but I still like it. I liked Atlanta heading into the year. I'm shocked their offensive line is playing as poorly as it is. And now you suddenly have injuries starting to fester. They already lost Lindstrom. Now they lost Keanu O'Neal, their talented safety. And we're just 3 weeks into the year. So, I feel like they're going to lose more players. And suddenly they're back to where they started last year. And it's just looking bad.
Yeah, and I think the biggest surprise this year is just the complete regression of Jake Matthews for them. It's been like, because that was the one guy I was like, oh yeah, he and Alex Mack will be solid. Mack, you can at least say he's been around a while. Matthews, it's inexplicable.
Yeah, he's got to be injured. Kamoko Toure looked like Reggie White last week against them. It was just so bad. I have no idea what happened to him. I feel like in like maybe mid-January, early February, it's going to come out that Matthews is playing on a bum knee or something, because there's no reason for him to be this bad, like none.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's before we get to the late afternoon games, should mention this podcast is brought to you by DraftKings.com. So if you go to DraftKings.com and enter in promo code Walter Football, that's one word, Walter Football, you can get a bonus with your first deposit. So you get to play contests for free and you get to help out this podcast. So why not enter some DraftKings lineups? Let's get to the late afternoon slate. The Buccaneers are at the Rams. Rams opened up -9.5, it's up to 10. Not a lot of public action on either side here. So who do you like in this game?
I don't get why the Rams are at 10 now. -10. Like I have it written down in my notes as 9.5, like you said, what it was earlier. But this year the Rams have barely beaten Cam Newton while basically Cam Newton was playing on one leg and with one arm. They pushed in that game. They crushed a Saints team that was really deflated after they lost Drew Brees and was not prepared to deal with that, and also got screwed by the officials who blew the whistle too soon on that fumble return by Cameron Jordan. Saints gotta love officials. I mean, right. Every single time they managed to screw them over. And then the Rams almost gave up a game-tying touchdown to the Browns on Sunday Night Football this past week too. Like, I mean, they did not play particularly well. I haven't liked what I've seen out of Jared Goff. And I don't think the Buccaneers are anything great. I think their defense is better than it was last year. Their offense is a little bit worse because Winston's not playing as well. And Byron Leftwich and Bruce Arians are still trying to get their scheme integrated there. But I just think that the spread is way too high, and the Rams could be looking ahead to Thursday night against Seattle. They're playing the Seahawks on the road. So I'm taking Bucks. If it's plus 10, I mean, that's a no-brainer to me. A few units on that at least. This might be one of my bigger plays this week. I just don't see why the Rams are favored by that much.
No, I don't either. I made this line personally minus 7.5. So 10 is a key number. It's not that prevalent as the other ones, but it's still something that you want if you're going to bet this game. Much better than 9.5. Look at the metrics. The Hilton advanced spread was -9, so this moved the point. Not the craziest movement in the world, but still substantial. And then DVOA says the line should be Rams -8. So this line is inflated. Not a surprise because the Rams beat the quote unquote Super Bowl champions on national TV. So kind of not surprised at all by the line movement. So I think we can take advantage of it. So I'm with you. I'm on the Buccaneers. I actually like them a lot here. I have them for 4 units. In addition to the spread being too high, and also with what you said about the Rams looking forward to playing the Seahawks. It's a big game for them. Another concern for the Rams is the play of their offensive line. It's like we talk about the Falcons blocking being bad. The Rams offensive line has been awful this year, and teams haven't been able to take advantage of it because, as you said, Newton was playing on one leg, and then you have Drew Brees who was out, and then you have the Browns who can't block, and their entire secondary is out. So I've been calling the Rams the luckiest team in the league. And their luck has to run out at some point. And I think that might happen here. The Buccaneers, while their defense isn't great, their defensive line is awesome. Shaq Barrett had 4 sacks last week. They have Ndamukong Suh. They have Vita Vea. They have some really good players up front. And I think they could cause problems for Jared Goff. And as we all know, Jared Goff is a much different player when he's flustered by pressure. And I think that's going to happen in this game. He has – the Rams have always been playing with the lead so far this year. And I think this might be the first time where Goff might be trailing, especially if Winston doesn't implode, which could always happen. The Rams could be trailing, and I think Goff could have a bad game here. So I actually like the Buccaneers a lot.
Yeah, I'm glad you're in on this one too, because like you said, the only thing that I'd be worried about is Winston completely imploding. Like in the past, that wasn't as big of a deal when he had like Ryan Fitzpatrick behind him last year, because Fitzpatrick can at least be steady. But if we get to a point where Winston throws like 5 interceptions and then Blaine Gabbert comes into the game, I wouldn't like this spread as much. But I think it's a no-brainer. I agree. The Rams are super lucky. They're going to be looking ahead. So this is probably my biggest play of the week. I'll probably match your 4 units on this one.
Nice. Glad we're in agreement. This next game I love a lot as well. The Seahawks are at the Cardinals. Line open up Seahawks -3.5, up to 5, actually 5.5 at Bookmaker. As you would imagine, the public's all over Seattle, 75% of the action on the Seahawks. So are you with the public here?
No, I'm not. I don't see why this line is that high. The Seahawks they're a road favorite against a team that's 2-1 against the spread. The only spread that the Cardinals didn't match was last week against the Panthers, and that was against Kyle Allen, who we didn't know a lot about going into. But the Cardinals have covered against a couple good teams like the Ravens and the Lions, so those are pretty good teams. And the Seahawks again could be looking ahead to that matchup with the Rams. So I think the Seahawks are the wrong side here. I'm going to go with the Cardinals. If it's up to +5, 5.5, I'm definitely going at least a couple of units on this one because Murray kept those first 2 games close. So at the very least, I think this game's decided by a field goal, and it's possible Arizona could win this one outright.
I think they will win outright. I have this for 5 units as well. So Tennessee and Arizona are my top plays of the week. This line is way off. So DVOA says that the spread should be Seattle -3, which is kind of reasonable. I made this line Arizona -1. So yeah, I don't know why Seattle's favored on the road. They haven't played well this year. If you look at all their games, they haven't been impressive. Week 1, they barely beat the Bengals, who are awful. Week 2, they barely beat Mason Rudolph and Ben Roethlisberger, who's throwing with a broken arm or something, wherever he has. And then week 3, they get blown out by the Saints. So why is this team favored by more than 3? I think 3 should be the absolute highest they should be favored by. The advanced spread in this game is Seattle -3. So because of that one loss to Carolina, Arizona has moved up, 5 point moved up 2 points to -5 or even 5.5 at bookmaker, as I said. That shouldn't happen. As I said before, like unless there's an injury, like no one game should move a line this many points. And so I feel like we're getting a ton of value with Arizona. And I think Arizona matches up well with Seattle anyway. Arizona has had trouble with the line so far in 3 quarters. And then Carolina, those 2 teams have very good pass rushes. Conversely, Arizona almost beat Baltimore. Baltimore doesn't have a good pass rush anymore with Terrell Suggs gone and Zadarius Smith gone. And Seattle doesn't have a good pass rush. You have Ezekiel Ansah, who's just kind of mediocre at this stage of his career. Jadeveon Clowney doesn't seem like he's in shape. And the Seattle secondary is just atrocious. So I think if Kyler Murray gets more time in the pocket, and I assume that's going to be the case, he should be able to throw all over the Seattle secondary, which, again, they allowed Andy Dalton to throw for more than 400 yards. So I think this could be a high-scoring shootout. And, I feel like this is going to be decided by a field goal. So I like Arizona a lot.
Yeah, and my dad just posted some advice on the comments thread. He says, if it's a field goal, don't go Seahawks. So he has Jason Myers on his fantasy team right now, and I don't think he quite likes that. But yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the Cardinals are the right side here. The spread is off. The motivation is better with them than it is with the Seahawks. So yeah, I would definitely lean on the Cardinals here, and I've had pretty good success betting the Cardinals to start the year. So I won't turn back now.
It's a good idea. And yeah, with the kickers, I think everyone's frustrated with their kickers. Yeah, it's a bad year. Like even Adam Vinatieri is missing everything. It's like
I pulled off a remarkable feat in my first 2 weeks. I had 2 different kickers, 0 total points.
wow.
Matt Bryant and Matt Prater, 0 points each week, and I lost 1 game by 2 points. It was terrible. But yeah, so kickers are not liked right now in the Kamenker household.
Yeah, they're a blight on fantasy football. I'm so glad DFS got rid of them. I remember when FanDuel and DraftKings had kickers, and you had to decide which kicker you wanted. It was brutal. It's like it's so random. Like football is random enough. You're going to add more randomness to it. Like just come on.
I like it for year-long leagues because it does add the randomness and frustration. But for weekly stuff, it's like, no, I don't need any more randomness.
Yeah, and I like it for year-long leagues as well because that means that people draft kickers in the 8th round for some reason, and that tends to happen every league. Like every league I'm in, there are smart owners, but then there are some owners who draft Stephen Gostkowski in the 6th round, and that actually happened a few years ago. I couldn't believe it, but it happened. So, just take advantage of it, I guess. All right, next game, Vikings are at the Bears. Line opened up Bears -3, actually moved down to -2.5, which was surprising to me. Even more surprising, this is the highest, I should say, the most lopsided bet game of the week. Almost 90% of the money is on the Vikings, which is shocking to me. So what do you think about that, and who do you like in this game?
All right, so 90% of the money being on the Vikings makes me very wary of my pick now because my pick is the Vikings. This is a matchup of 2 overrated teams right now. The Bears really should be 1 and 2 if it wasn't for some bad officiating and some bad late game defense from Denver. They just crushed the Redskins, but I thought this line was a little bit of an overreaction to that game. The Vikings have a great defense. They're really good against the spread under Mike Zimmer. The Vikings are 15-11 against the spread as away dogs under Zimmer. I thought that stat was pretty great. And I wanted to go with the Vikings at the Vikings +3 because I thought this would be a close game. I know Kirk Cousins struggled against the Bears last year, though, so that gave me a little bit of pause. With the line moving down, I'm much less confident in this pick, but I'm sticking with the Vikings. I think the defense and run game combination is better for them than it is for Chicago right now. Chicago obviously has a great defense, but they haven't figured out how to use David Montgomery properly yet and are averaging less than 100 yards rushing per game. So I think they're going to have to beat the Vikings through the air. I don't know if that can happen again. Mitch Trubisky was only really good through the air in the first half last week against the Redskins. So I'm on the Vikings here. I don't have a ton of confidence in it, so I might bet a unit on it, but
Uh,
definitely with all that money being on the Vikings now, I'm kind of afraid.
Yeah, I feel like one of the best things you can do in football, if you don't know anything about the game, is find the biggest public underdog and fade them, because public underdogs usually don't do well, and Vikings are the public underdog of all public underdogs here. Like, it's almost 90% of the money on being on one team is insane for any sport, especially football, when you get such a big volume of action on every game. And I'm kind of torn on this one. So I'm ultimately going to be on the Bears because of the public dog stuff. But there are obviously a couple of concerns for the Bears. Mitchell Trubisky being one of them, going against a great defense like Minnesota's. He was mediocre on Monday Night Football. Like, he posted a good stat line, but he was not that good. And so going against a better defense is concerning. You have Mike Zimmer, who's had an extra day to prepare for this game. I think that's a big deal because Zimmer is in my opinion, one of the better coaches in the NFL. His record is unbelievable. Like, I think his record against the spread is 54-28 as head coach of the Vikings, which is just insane. So you have those two factors. So that makes me not want to bet the Bears. But in addition to the public dog stuff against the Vikings, you also have Kirk Cousins, who has a penchant for choking in big games. It's obviously a big game, because this could decide the division or at least a wild card spot. And, Cousins always seems to choke. And I feel like what's going to happen is it's going to be a low scoring game. It's going to be like 9-6, like 13-10, something like that. And then Cousins is going to throw this horrible interception that's going to be returned deep into Minnesota territory. And the Bears are going to kick a field goal to win the game. I think that's what's going to happen. Cousins is a disaster. And it's just saying a lot that I trust Trubisky over Cousins, because they're both horrible. But Cousins is, he posts better stats, but in bigger games he's worse than Trubisky is. So yeah, I'm going with the Bears.
Yeah, and at least Trubisky is bad, but not paid as much as Cousins is. I've watched Cousins blow a number of games for the Redskins over the years, so I completely get the analysis here. I could very well see a very, very low-scoring game. I would be tempted to take the under in this game, but there are two problems with that. It's hanging around to 38.5 right now, which is extraordinarily low, and I'm also 0-4 in the over/under category this year, so not confident in myself enough to do that. But yeah, I don't love the idea of betting this one solely because I think it could be a crapshoot decided by a field goal type thing or a pick six. So definitely not a game I'm looking forward to watching. And I kind of hope the Bears. Well, no, I don't want the Bears to win. Actually, I like the Packers and the Lions in the NFC. I'm a Packers owner, and Matt Patricia went to Amherst College or coached there. So, I've got ties in the NFC North.
Okay. You saying 38 was a low number kind of makes me long for the good old days when 38 was kind of like an average number for totals. Like, I remember it being very common to see totals of like 33, 32. This is like when I first started handicapping the NFL, which is like 99, 2000, 2001. That's when there was less scoring, with the Peyton Manning rules changed everything with the illegal contact. But yeah, 38 is now the lowest total on the slate, which is kind of insane. It's just amazing how much football has changed just because of one rule, basically. So it's weird. Anyway, the last of the late afternoon games, the Jaguars are at the Broncos. This line opened up -3, still -3, although there's juice on Denver. Equal action. So who do you like in this game?
I like the Broncos. Again, I'm not super sold on this. I think the public might overreact a little bit to Gardner Minshew, and I think that's the reason the line opened up at -3. But if the line's moving up in favor of the Jaguars, so being higher on the Broncos side, I think that would give me a little more pause. But the Broncos could easily be 2-1 and not 0-3. They have the altitude advantage in Denver, so the Jaguars will have to deal with that. Jalen Ramsey might not play in this game because he's either actually sick, faking sick, or just really doing his best to get traded away from this team. So if he doesn't play, I think the Jaguars will have a little bit more trouble covering the Denver offensive weapons because Emmanuel Sanders and Cortland Sutton are both very good. And outside of Bouye and Ramsey, I'm not a big DJ Hayden guy for the Jaguars, so I think they'll be able to move the ball. And they started getting their running game going last week. The Broncos did. Phillip Lindsay was great against the Packers, so I'm leaning on the Broncos here. I think they're desperate for a win, and I think Gardner Minshew, even with the extra preparation coming off of a big win, the Jaguars may not be as motivated to try to back it up. I think Gardner will be, but I don't know about the rest of the team.
Yeah, I don't know about this Gardner Minshew character. I mean, he had a good game on Thursday night. He made some good passes. He did have some bad passes as well, but I think people are too quick to forget how bad he was against the Texans. For 3.5 quarters, he did nothing. In fact, he lost the fumble that set up the Texans to go up double digits. And then in the final 2 drives, it started clicking for him. But I don't think he's good overall, and this matchup is much worse for him because the Broncos have the personnel to take away his weapons, which aren't that good. Like DJ Chark is his best weapon. I feel like Chris Harris can just shut him down, and that'll be it. And then now he has to throw to even worse receivers. I just feel like this is a bad spot for the Jaguars. I don't think they'll be able to run the ball. Todd Davis being back is helping against the run. So I just really don't see the Jaguars moving the ball that well. And what you said about Jalen Ramsey, I mean, yeah, he doesn't have the flu. Like, come on, it's just the biggest excuse in the world. I'm sick. He doesn't want to practice. And Doug Marrone has a don't practice, don't play policy. So we'll see if that holds up. Honestly, if I'm the Jaguars, I don't play him because if he wants to be traded, then you don't want him to be hurt. You want to get all you can for him. So, I mean, if he doesn't play, that opens up stuff for Emmanuel Sanders and Cortland Sutton. Phillip Lindsay, as you said, had a great game. He was in the winning lineup of the $1 million maker on DraftKings. So maybe that convinces Denver to use him more often. I think the Jaguars are a great fade this week. The media is hyping them up. They had this big win on national TV. As Kenny from our podcast says, they're going to be smelling themselves a little bit too much. So I like that for Denver, and the Broncos are desperate to avoid 0-4. You can come back from 0-3, 0-4. Forget about it. They're done. So this is a must-win game for them early in the year. We're getting a little bit of line value. The Westgate advanced spread was Broncos -3.5. It moved down to 3, which is a huge deal. A half a point doesn't sound like a lot, but again, 3 is the most prominent key number in the NFL. Most games end on 3. So getting -3 is a huge deal. So I like Denver quite a bit. It's a 3-unit pick. I was hoping for something less than -3. After Denver lost again, and then the hype around the Jaguars, I was hoping we get -2.5 or -2. And if that were the case, I'd be 4 or 5 units on Denver. But still 3, I still think -3 is a great number.
Yeah, it's definitely a good number. And I on a personal note, I bet Vic Fangio to win Coach of the Year. And I have a pretty good track record of picking the second place finisher in Coach of the Year with my bets. The last couple of years, I think I had. Who did I have? I think I had Anthony Lynn last year and Doug Peterson the year before. So I'm hoping that Fangio can keep my streak of being one away, keep it intact. So he'll need to get the Broncos going if that's going to happen. So, but I think they could make a run and possibly earn a wild card spot. The AFC's not that strong, but it all starts against Minshew.
Yeah, true. And I lost all faith in Coach of the Year awards when they gave Jason Garrett Coach of the Year 3 years ago. It's like, all right, come on. This guy was not prepared for a playoff game, and you're going to give him Coach of the Year. It's ridiculous. By the way, TJ in the chat says he thought Case Keenum was better than Kirk Cousins for the Vikings. Thoughts on that?
I would say Case Keenum in his season with the Vikings probably was better than what Kirk Cousins was. In a vacuum, it's really hard to evaluate how good each player was because, Cousins in Washington worked with Sean McVay for part of the time there. And he looked really good and put up a lot of good numbers there. But like you said, he struggled in big games. Keenum's been kind of the opposite. He had one really good season, but at other points in his career, he hasn't been as good. But if we're talking solely in Minnesota, I think they probably have buyer's remorse on Cousins and would rather have taken Keenum for whatever it is, 10 to 15 million less on a longer term deal.
Yeah, I was talking to someone who lives in Minnesota. He actually, I don't know if I'm going to say his name, but he's people may have heard of him. He's not like super famous, but he's a sports writer who's known in the area. And he said that, ahead of that offseason when they had the dilemma with all the quarterbacks, he said he would resign Keenum and then draft Lamar Jackson in the first round. So he was right on the money there. That's exactly what they should have done. Instead, they overpaid Cousins, and Cousins. Like, if you compare the two, Cousins obviously more talented than Keenum, but Keenum is better in the clutch. Like, I mean, we have enough sample size to determine that Cousins just chokes in big games, whereas Keenum is like a feisty guy. He'll make mistakes, he'll commit turnovers, but if the game's on the line, I would trust him way more than Cousins. So, I agree. I think you had to go Keenum over Cousins when you factor in the price.
Yeah, and I wonder if Cousins had gone to a place where maybe, Super Bowl aspirations weren't the number one thing on the list. Like, say he had signed with Cleveland or something. I wonder if the lack of expectations there would it be better for him. I'm not entirely convinced because the expectations in Washington were just, hey, let's try to get to the wild card when he was there, and they couldn't get it done. But because we're going to look back at this like 5 years from now and say, how was Kirk Cousins paid that much money that summer amid all that, all the quarterbacks moving around? And but I would have liked to see him maybe go to Denver or someplace like that, and go to a team that wasn't on the verge of a Super Bowl and was just looking to make the playoffs. But we're at where we're at now.
Yeah, but even then in Denver, like, he would be expected to be like the next John Elway. Maybe not, but like he'd be in Elway's shadow. You know what I mean? So maybe even that like would cause him to choke. Like, you just can't trust him at all. So let's move on to the Sunday night game. The Cowboys are at the Saints. Cowboys open up -3. There was some sharp action on the Saints, because I was prepared to bet the Saints a +3, and like minutes later it was already a +2.5. So who do you like in this game?
I love the Saints. I happened to get them at +3 just before the line change.
Nice.
I just think that there's so much going into this game that works for the Saints. The Cowboys are 3-0, but they haven't really beaten any good teams. They beat the Giants with Eli Manning, the Redskins, who, as we've discussed, have talent but aren't very good overall. And then last week they beat the Dolphins, but were only leading them by 4 at halftime. So, that's not very good against the worst team in NFL history, possibly. So the Saints also lost to the Cowboys last year, and the Cowboys were kind of their kryptonite throughout the year. So I think there could be a revenge game factor there. The Saints didn't look like they missed a beat with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback, and it was against the Seahawks, who haven't been great in coverage or on defense. So, that's a little something to keep an eye on. But the Saints are the home team. Teddy Bridgewater has been dominant against the spread in his career. I think he's something like 15-3. So I really like the Saints in this spot. I'll be betting them for 3 or 4 units at up. I got them at +3. I already locked in. So that'll be good. And I just think the Cowboys are overrated right now, and they got to come back down to earth. And this is a great opportunity for them to do that.
Yeah, I agree. If you still want +3, you can still get +3 at Bovada, but you have to pay -125 juice, which is worth it. I think the math comes out to it's worth paying 15 cents on the dollar for 3. That's how important that number is. If it's -130, that might give me some pause, but -125 is still worth it. This line is just way off. The Saints, I feel like, should be favored. I made this line New Orleans -1, and everything else agrees with me on this. The computer model I use says Saints -2 is the correct number. The VOA says Saints -1 is the right number. So yeah, lots of value with the Saints at +3. As I said before, 3 is the key number you want. And I completely agree. I mean, the Cowboys, they could be good, like, for all we know, but they played 3 of the worst teams in the NFL so far. So we don't know how good they are. So I don't know why they should be favored by 3 points on the road against the Saints team that has a great home field advantage. There's going to be a lot of energy in the Superdome. And this is kind of like a statement game for the Saints to prove that, they can win without Drew Brees. They won last week, but this is a national TV game. They're in the spotlight. I think they want to show out here and kind of kind of prove that they belong. And then you have the Cowboys, who are 3-0. There's no desperation for them to win this game, especially considering that they have to play the Packers next week, who are also 3-0. So it's kind of like a big showdown next week for the Cowboys. So I think they could overlook the Saints. So I think there's a lot favoring New Orleans here. And I would have made this 5 units at +3 -110. +3 -125, I would go 4 units. So kind of actually it comes out to like at -125, you're betting five units to win 4. So it's kind of sort of like a 5 unit play in a sense, but still like a 4 unit play. I love New Orleans here.
Yeah, and I can just picture Jason Garrett getting the Cowboys ready for this, being like, all right, guys, it's not Drew Brees, it's Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill. We got this. And then them being like, oh, we definitely didn't have this. We might need to reassess here. So I just think the Saints also just really want to stay afloat with Drew Brees out, because they know if they can get through this with like even a 500 record with Bridgewater starting these next 6 to 8 weeks, that they'll have a chance to make a playoff run, especially where the NFC South is looking a lot weaker than we all thought it was going to be to start the year.
Yeah, for sure. TJ in the chat says that Jason Garrett is Andy Reid 2.0. I think it's more Andy Reid 0.2. I think Andy Reid is a lot better coach than Garrett. I actually like Andy Reid a lot. I mean, he has his flaws, time management, stuff like that. But he's fantastic at preparing a team to play a game. And he's great with quarterbacks. Like, you look at every quarterback he's coached, except for Kevin Kolb, like he's gotten the most out of that quarterback. Whereas I don't know what Jason Garrett does well. Like, I mean, I can't think of a positive attribute that Jason Garrett has, except for, maybe like he could say yes to Jerry Jones. I don't know. I don't think the two are even close in my opinion.
Yeah, I love Andy Reid. I know he comes up short, and the time management thing has been an issue. But like you said, he develops quarterbacks really, really well. That's part of the reason that Patrick Mahomes is succeeding. The other part of the reason, obviously, being that Patrick Mahomes is supremely talented. But, Reid really knew how to manage him and get his career started properly. So I think I like Andy Reid much better than Jason Garrett. And around Halloween time, when we do this podcast, I'll have my Andy Reid costume ready, because if I shave down to a walrus style mustache, I pull off a pretty good Andy Reid. So
nice,
yeah.
Nice. I look forward to that. I thought you were gonna say you're gonna be Jason Garrett because of the red hair. So I feel like either one could work, really.
Yeah, I think Andy Reid was a redhead back in the day too. His nickname was Big Red, which is what I want my nickname to be. Some people called me that in high school, but we'll stick with Jacob. That's fine too.
Yeah. It's a shame that nickname was taken already. Maybe it could be a different one, but I look forward to seeing that Halloween costume. The Monday night game, Bengals at the Steelers. Steelers open up -4.5, down to 4. So who do you like this game?
Man, we're really getting some good Monday night football games this year, aren't we? Yeah,
it's gonna be a great one.
Yeah, I have the Steelers. I'm not betting this game. The Bengals are bad, but Mason Rudolph is too. But the Steelers are going to be playing with desperation. They have absolutely no incentive to lose, because they traded their first round pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick, because they believe in Mason Rudolph so much, which we're going to find out if that was smart or not. After their loss to the 49ers, it doesn't look like it was that smart. So they'll be looking to, hopefully get him his first win of his career at home. Maybe get that offense clicking a little bit. They still haven't found a run game. They still haven't gotten the ball to Juju Smith-Schuster enough. And, they're searching for a number 2 receiver, whether it's going to be Jay Washington or Don Moncrief. But at this point, I can't bring myself to take the Bengals. They easily cover in this game. But just the whole narrative that the Steelers are desperate for a win in the primetime home game, I just can't see losing. So I'm going with them. I don't have much confidence in this, and I am not looking forward to this game very much.
No, I'm not either. This game's going to be a mess. I think the NFL, someone said that the NFL scheduled these sort of games for the historical purposes. The Redskins and Bears, obviously longtime teams, and they had Broncos, Raiders, so stuff like that. But, these games haven't been good. And I think this one's kind of going to follow suit. this looks like a bad game. So you said that the Steelers might be regretting that trade. It might already be happening because they're currently projected to have the 4th overall pick in the 2020 draft. So that means the Dolphins will have number 1 and number 4, assuming they keep losing. So yeah, that turns out to be Tua Tagovailoa and Jerry Jeudy, and then they get another they get another first round pick later on in the draft. So like. I feel like the Dolphins are really they really won this one. I don't know. Like Fitzpatrick made some good plays this past week, but he's definitely not worth the 4th overall pick in the draft. And I don't know if we're going to see Mason Rudolph play better. I should say like he's going to play better in this matchup because the Bengals are poor defensively, but overall I don't think he's going to play as well as they hope. Against better teams. So I'm going to be on the Steelers in this game. I think. It really depends on Cordy Glenn's injury. Glenn has missed the first 3 games with a concussion. He's so huge for the Cincinnati offensive line because without him, they can't block at all. So I don't know how they're going to block the Steeler edge rushers without him. But if he plays, that at least gives the Bengals a chance to move the ball, whether it's through Mixon or Andy Dalton throwing passes. And so, if you think about it, Mason Rudolph is favored by 4 points, which seems like a mistake. But on the other hand, if Glenn is out, I don't think the Bengals are going to move the ball successfully. So right now I'm going to be on the Steelers. But if it's announced that Glenn is playing, I may change my pick to the Bengals. But I'm either way, I'm not going to bet this game. This game seems miserable to me.
Yeah, there's too many wild cards in this game because who knows? Mason Rudolph could play awesome or he could play terrible. Same can be said for Andy Dalton, and then you got Cordy Glenn too. So all that stuff is playing into it. That fact that the Dolphins could possibly get to Tagovailoa and Jerry Jeudy would be pretty awesome. I'd love to see what they can do together at the NFL level. So if the Steelers are going to be bad, and maybe we'll see that happen. And I like Minka Fitzpatrick as a player too, but he definitely wasn't worth a top 5 pick in this upcoming draft. I would have liked to see like a team like the Patriots, just for example, a team that's going to make the playoffs, trade for one of those really versatile guys because it looks like Fitzpatrick's bought into his role in Pittsburgh. But we'll see how that pays off, but it doesn't look like it's going to.
No, it doesn't seem like it. All right, before we go, last question in the chat. Is it bad that I think the Browns and Ravens will be top 2 in the division? I feel like it has to be, right? The Steelers and Bengals are 0-3. Obviously, unless they tie, one of them is going to be winless still. And I really don't see Mason Rudolph making a run for the Steelers. And the Bengals, I guess the Bengals have a chance if AJ Green comes back soon, and then if Cordy Glenn stays healthy, maybe they have a chance because I'm not too high on the Browns and Ravens. But how do you see that division shaking out?
I'd probably go Ravens at the top, and then Browns, Steelers, Bengals. I do think that there is an off chance that if the Browns continue to struggle, the Steelers could overtake them. But again, that would require Mason Rudolph to play well. And it's just he just did not throw well downfield at all against the 49ers. That was the big issue. Everything he was completing seemed to be close to the line of scrimmage. So they're not going to move the ball much if that happens, especially with James Conner struggling. So I think Ravens, Browns, Steelers, Bengals is how I see it going now. But that Monday night game could change things if Rudolph is terrible and the Bengals beat him. So we'll see. But I think the Ravens are still the team to beat in that division. But it's a pretty overrated division at this point, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would go in that direction as well, which kind of makes me sad because I bet the Ravens under win total. And looks bad right now because I thought the Steelers would be a lot better, but Roethlisberger is just wasn't healthy at all. I kind of curious. I hope we find out at some point when that injury happened because he looked fine in the preseason. So it's like was it off the field? Like when did that happen? Because he was never himself. Even in that first game, he just looked off. And I was kind of curious. I hope that story comes out. I just don't know. Do you have any idea about that?
I don't really, because it didn't look like he got hurt at any point against the Patriots. Again, I watched that whole game as a Patriots fan and was keeping a keen eye on him. But the whole time, I thought that it must have, after it was revealed that he was injured, I was like, it must have happened as some sort of repetition type injury, like just it was going to go at some point. and it just happened in between that last preseason game and the first one. So, like,
Yeah.
you know, it's sort of like when a pitcher suffers like a torn UCL for Tommy John. It's not always that it's just outright, oh, it's torn. It's just the wear and tear, and there's a lot of slight tears in it. So if it's that type of elbow injury, it could happen at any point.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, I hope it comes out, but we'll see. All right, that's it for this week. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, so at NBC Sports Boston, we covered the whole Antonio Brown release from the Patriots over the course of this past weekend. So for any fallout and timeline of the whole Brown with the Patriots saga, head on over there. I wrote up that timeline. We got all your Jay Gruden possibly being fired stuff over at Ringo's Rag. It's a very exciting time for the two places I work. And if you want to follow me for just general football thoughts, some of my picks this week, go to Twitter at Jacob Kaminker. And I'm always happy to talk about anything football. So you'll be able to find me there.
Sounds good. I'm at waltzerfootball.com. Updated picks throughout the week, based on injuries. Stuff can change. Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I ended up betting a couple games that I didn't say I was going to bet during the podcast because, it's Tuesday. A lot can change with injuries and stuff like that. So definitely check that out. Updated 2020 mock draft tomorrow with the Dolphins. There are 2 picks in the top 4. And fantasy football rankings updated throughout the week. So, I will talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, man.
All right. Bye.
Bye.